Good morning, this is Stephen from Stephen's Archery Journey. I want to talk about the symmetrical and asymmetrical horn thumb ring heavy poundage by Bamboo Archery in Malaysia. I ordered these through Roth Archery, Ben Roth in the United States. Due to every ring being custom produced, there is no ready stock. You have to place an order and wait a few weeks for production and then shipping. Getting fit for these rings requires a clear ruler and taking multiple pictures of different thumb measurements for an exact fit. However, the result is a ring that has a very precise fit to your thumb. I requested the heavy poundage versions because I regularly shoot bows above 50 pounds. I've used them regularly in the 75 pound to 105 pound weight range, and they held up well for that. If they were the standard poundage versions, I would not necessarily trust them at those weights. I also made note that I always shoot with a kulak, and doing so adds a slight thickness that should be accounted for when ordering rings. For example, instead of leaning toward a tight-fitting ring, you want one slightly looser to account for tightening them with a kulak. I also like a slightly looser ring because my thumb tends to fluctuate a lot. I also use a Korean-style adjustable leather loop to help account for this. Overall, the rings that I received fit great using them the way that I would typically use my rings. Here's a close-up shot of the symmetrical ring. You can see clearly the symmetrical shape as the ring tapers down toward the release. To contrast this, here's the asymmetrical ring. On this ring, you can clearly see an asymmetrical design as the ring tapers down. Each ring is made out of Tibetan yak horn, the main advantage versus buffalo horn being a wider spectrum of possible colors. I requested one ring to be darker than the other. You can make a request and they can try, but it's not an exact science. They are very beautiful after a fresh coat of oil with the sun shining through the more translucent parts of the ring, further contrasting the color differences. To contrast horn versus metal, you typically end up with a lighter ring, which can help prevent thumb fatigue. Horn also tends to be grippier with the polished outer surface, smooth, but still grippier than the almost mirror-like finish of a metal ring. The bigger difference, however, tends to be on the interior, where horn can be left very coarse to provide a very grippy textile feel. Horn does require very slight maintenance, though. You do need to oil the rings occasionally, which is why they sell a small container of oil. I give these rings a standing ovation in the beauty department. They are absolutely the prettiest rings that I own, no question. Next, let's compare and contrast ring weights in grains. Here we have the lightest ring on the scale, which would be a plastic ring. Here we're sitting around 61 grains. Next, let's measure the horn ring. Keep in mind I do have a kulak and a strap, so it will add a little bit of weight. 152 grains. Next, let's measure an Ottoman metal ring, which would be a similar design just in metal. Here we're already up to 340 grains. Here's the ever popular Vermeil Victory ring. This ring has a little more heft to it, and we're up to 493 grains. Last but not least, the heaviest ring that I own, a metal Gaoyang Ming Dynasty style ring, which is all the way up over 1,000 grains. So there's quite a bit of difference across the spectrum. Now let's discuss performance. This is always going to be subjective to each archer. It's really something you have to give thought to and decide what your own use cases for the rings will be. Personally, I already used and preferred shallow hook rings when I ordered these, so that was less of an adjustment for me. Some people have only used a Vermal Victory ring or ring with a string guard where the string does not touch the thumb. These rings are closer in execution to an Ottoman or Turkish ring, where the string sits directly against the thumb and drops off a ledge. I prefer the symmetrical ring at the highest weights I draw, 75 pounds to 105 pounds. At these weights, I think it comes down to the symmetrical ring being slightly less hair trigger than the asymmetrical ring. I feel more in control with the symmetrical ring at heavy weights as a result. I prefer the asymmetrical ring at lower draw weights, anything below 75 pounds. At these weights, I'm more likely to be doing target archery where accuracy is more important than brute strength. I feel slightly more accurate at these weights with the asymmetrical ring. These rings are definitely great performers, though not necessarily immediately better than every other ring. I still think metal rings can be thinner for the same durability, offer slightly more control and slightly more crisp release at very high weights, especially lower profile shallow hook metal rings like an Ottoman or Turkish design. However, that is not going to be the use case for many people. To conclude, these are beautiful horn rings at an affordable price, custom sized to your thumb dimensions. I don't have much to complain about, honestly. What more can you really ask for in a horn ring? My only disclaimer is that I would not recommend these as your first ring. Start with plastic or inexpensive metal and try a few different ring styles. You may not even prefer a shallow hook ring like these. Your thumb is also going to grow and swell once you start shooting regularly. You don't necessarily want to get one of these only to have it be too small after you start shooting more often. This concludes my review of the symmetrical and asymmetrical heavy poundage horn rings from Bamboo Archery in Malaysia, purchased through Roth Archery in the United States. Happy shooting, and we'll catch you next time.